Most people think losing weight is simple. Eat less, move more, watch the number on the scale go down. And when it does, they assume they're winning. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Your body doesn't actually care how much weight you lose. It cares what you're made of when the weight is gone. Right now, millions of people are celebrating smaller numbers on the scale, while their bodies are quietly becoming weaker. Because every time they lose another kilogram, they're not just losing fat. Sometimes they're losing the very tissue that was supposed to keep them healthy, muscle. From an evolutionary perspective, it can actually make perfect sense, which raises a strange question. If fat exists to store energy, why would your body ever choose to destroy muscle first? The answer begins with one of the biggest misconceptions in modern nutrition. Most people imagine body fat like a savings account. Whenever food runs low, the body simply withdraws some fat, burns it for energy, and everything works exactly as planned. It's a comforting idea. It's also incomplete, because your body doesn't wake up every morning asking, "How can I burn more fat today?" It asks something far more important. What's the cheapest way to survive? For almost all of human history, the biggest threat wasn't belly fat. It was starvation. Every reserve could mean another day alive. That's why body fat is emergency fuel, a biological insurance policy your ancestors depended on countless times. So naturally, you'd expect your body to protect muscle only after all that stored fat is gone. But that's not what always happens. Unlike fat, muscle consumes energy every single day, even while you're resting. It constantly needs protein, repair, circulation, and maintenance. From the body's perspective, muscle is one of the most expensive tissues you own. If fat once is stored, it asks for very little, which means that under the wrong conditions, your body starts doing a ruthless calculation. Do I really need all of this muscle? If the answer appears to be no, the body begins dismantling it, long before your fat stores become truly threatened, because your body is deciding what to sacrifice. And once you understand those informations, almost every popular fat loss myth starts to fall apart. If your body is constantly making decisions about what to keep and what to sacrifice, what actually happens when your body finally decides to burn fat? It has to take it apart, transport it through the bloodstream, extract the energy locked inside it, and then dispose of every single atom that remains. It's an astonishingly organized process, and it begins inside your fat cells. Despite what many people believe, fat cells don't actually disappear when you lose weight. In most cases, you keep almost the same number of fat cells throughout adulthood. What changes is what's stored inside them. Tiny molecules called triglycerides. When food becomes scarce or your body senses it needs additional fuel, hormones send a message that those reserves are no longer off limits. The stored triglycerides are broken apart into glycerol and fatty acids, released into the bloodstream, and carried to tissues that need energy, like your muscles, heart, and even your liver. But here's the fascinating part. At this stage, the fat still isn't gone. It's simply changing locations. The real transformation only begins once those fatty acids enter your cells. Inside tiny structures called mitochondria, often described as the power plants of the cell, those molecules are gradually dismantled. Their chemical bonds release energy that allows your muscles to contract, your heart to beat, and every organ in your body to keep functioning. That's the energy your body has been saving for exactly this kind of situation. But once that energy has been extracted, there's still something left behind. Every atom that made up that fat molecule has to leave your body somehow. The largest portion of the fat you lose actually leaves your body every time you exhale. The carbon atoms stored inside fat combine with oxygen to form carbon dioxide, which is carried to your lungs and breathed back into the atmosphere. The remaining hydrogen becomes water that eventually leaves through urine, sweat, breath, and other body fluids. In other words, every deep breath after your body has burned fat contains tiny pieces of energy that may have been stored around your waist for years. It's one of the strangest facts in human biology. You're not simply burning fat. You're breathing part of it back into the world. But if the process is this sophisticated, why doesn't your body use those enormous fat stores all the time? Why would it ever choose to dismantle valuable muscle instead, when thousands of calories are already sitting safely stored under your skin? It has everything to do with the signals your body receives, and that's where almost every failed diet begins. If your body already has tens of thousands of calories stored as fat, why would it ever touch muscle? At first glance, it seems completely irrational. Why burn valuable tissue that allows you to move, lift, climb, and survive when there's an enormous energy reserve already waiting to be used? The answer is surprisingly simple. Your body isn't measuring how much fat you have. It's measuring what your muscles are being used for. If food becomes scarce and your muscles no longer appear to be doing meaningful work, your body reaches an uncomfortable conclusion. It isn't asking how strong you could become in the future. It's asking whether this tissue is still worth paying for today. If the answer appears to be no, reducing muscle becomes the fastest way to lower your daily energy demands. From your body's perspective, it isn't failure, it's efficiency. That's why severe dieting without resistance training can become such a problem. To you, lifting weights may simply feel like exercise. To your body, it's information. Every heavy repetition sends the same message. These muscles are still needed, don't get rid of them. Without that signal, the opposite message slowly begins to emerge. We're carrying around expensive tissue that serves no obvious purpose, and the body starts adapting. Not because it's trying to sabotage your progress, but because it's trying to survive with the lowest possible energy cost. This is why two people can eat exactly the same number of calories and lose the same amount of weight, yet finish with completely different bodies. One preserves strength, movement, and muscle. The other loses both fat and muscle together, becoming lighter without becoming healthier. Protein reinforces that message. Resistance training tells your body that muscle is still essential. Protein provides the building blocks to maintain it. Combined with a moderate calorie deficit, those signals fundamentally change what your body chooses to sacrifice. But even when you've done everything right, many people still notice something frustrating. Their face becomes leaner, arms become smaller, and their clothes fit differently. Yet your stomach seems almost untouched, almost as if their body is protecting that fat on purpose. If preserving muscle is all about the signals your body receives, then another mystery appears. Why does fat disappear from some places so quickly, while the area you care about most barely seems to change? Your body doesn't treat every fat cell equally. From an evolutionary perspective, some fat stores were simply too valuable to give away quickly. During long periods without food, those reserves acted as an emergency survival system, which is why your biology still protects certain areas more cautiously than others today. Part of that protection comes from tiny structures on the surface of every fat cell called adrenergic receptors. When your body needs energy, hormones like adrenaline and noradrenaline travel through the bloodstream, carrying the message that fuel is needed. But not every fat cell responds the same way. Some contain a higher proportion of beta receptors, which react quickly. Other areas contain relatively more alpha-2 receptors. Instead of encouraging fat release, they slow the process down, acting almost like a cautious brake that asks one final question before letting those energy reserves go. That's one reason fat around the lower abdomen, hips, and thighs often seems far more resistant than fat stored elsewhere. It's because your biology is naturally more conservative with those energy reserves. Blood flow matters as well. Hormones first have to reach the tissue, and the released fatty acids have to be carried away. In areas with lower circulation, that entire process simply happens more slowly. Hundreds of crunches will certainly strengthen your abdominal muscles, but they can't instruct your body to remove the fat covering them. That decision is made by your hormonal and metabolic systems, not by the muscle you're exercising. Those stubborn fat stores aren't impossible to reach. They simply require your body to receive the same metabolic signals consistently for long enough that it no longer sees those reserves as essential for survival. Which brings us to another misconception that causes millions of people to give up too early. Most people assume the answer is simply to exercise harder, but your body doesn't respond to effort alone. It responds to the kind of instructions that effort creates. And that completely changes the role of cardio. At this point, you might think the solution is obvious. If your body protects muscle and eventually burns fat, why not simply exercise as much as possible? More running, more hours in the gym, more calories burned. It sounds logical, but your body measures necessity. Imagine two people eating exactly the same diet. Both lose the same amount of weight. One spends hours running every week, the other combines moderate cardio with regular strength training. Months later, they step on the scale. The number is almost identical, but they don't look identical. One has maintained strong shoulders, defined legs, and a higher metabolism. The other appears softer, smaller, and noticeably weaker. The difference wasn't how many calories they burned. It was the message their bodies received. Cardio creates an energy demand. Your heart beats faster. Your breathing increases. Your muscles require fuel. That's exactly what cardio is designed to do. But lifting weights creates something completely different. It creates mechanical tension. Every controlled repetition tells your nervous system the same thing. This tissue is still essential. Your body doesn't understand barbells. It understands remain functional. For hundreds of thousands of years, producing force meant climbing, carrying, fighting, building shelter, protecting family, or escaping danger. Strong muscles solved real problems. That's why resistance training is so powerful during fat loss. Not because it burns extraordinary amounts of calories. In fact, a long run often burns far more. Its real value is something much less obvious. It changes your body's priorities. Your body starts asking, where else can we get the energy? That subtle shift changes everything. It doesn't mean muscle becomes impossible to lose. If calories are extremely low, protein intake is inadequate, or recovery completely breaks down, some muscle loss can still occur. But the body now has a reason to protect it. And that's exactly what successful fat loss looks like. Becoming leaner while keeping the tissue that allows you to stay strong, active, and healthy. Which is why the scale can be one of the most misleading tools people use, because it measures only one thing: weight. It never tells you what disappeared to create that number. For decades, we've talked about fat loss as though it were a battle against body fat itself. Burn more calories, eat less, exercise harder, lose weight. But your body has never understood those goals. It doesn't know you're trying to fit into an old pair of jeans. It doesn't know you're preparing for summer. And it certainly doesn't care what the number on your scale says tomorrow morning. Your body speaks an entirely different language. Every meal you eat, every workout you complete, every hour you sleep, every gram of protein you consume, they're all interpreted as information. Is food becoming scarce? Is this body still being challenged? Are these muscles still essential? Is it safe to release stored energy, or should we hold on to it just a little longer? And those answers quietly determine whether it protects muscle, stores fat, or finally begins letting those energy reserves go. Your biology was never designed to respond to force. It responds to evidence. The remarkable thing is that none of those signals has to be extreme. You don't need to starve yourself. You don't need endless hours of cardio. You don't need another miracle supplement promising to melt fat while you sleep. What your body responds to is consistency. A calorie deficit that's sustainable instead of punishing. Muscles that continue to receive a reason to exist. Enough protein to repair what you're asking your body to preserve. Enough recovery to convince your biology that survival isn't under threat. Individually, those choices seem almost insignificant. Together, they completely change the decision your body makes. And maybe that's the biggest misconception we've had all along. The goal was never simply to lose weight. Weight is just a number. Your body has been deciding what is worth keeping and what it can afford to let go. The people who succeed aren't necessarily the ones with the strongest willpower. They're the ones who consistently give their biology the same message until it finally believes them. Because in the end, the scale can only tell you how much weight you've lost. It can never tell you whether your body lost the right thing.